Good morning. I hereby announce that pursuant to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in the notice which was sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, and posted on the bulletin board in Township Hall, and filed in the Township Clerk's office on April 13th, 2023. Mayor Lucarelli?
Here.
Mr. Improviduto?
Here.
Mr. Bontempo?
Here.
Mr. Foster?
Here.
Ms. LaMountain?
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Wendy. Could I have everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can everyone please continue standing for a moment of silence and take a moment for our troops, both home and abroad, that keep us safe every day. Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone. Oh, okay, that was a joke. Today is our, we have a special meeting for our budget, and I guess I'm going to turn it over to our Administrator, Jay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank
Good
you.
morning.
Good morning.
Mayor, if I may, I'm going to start with a few introductory overviews, as well as just walk you through the budget. I know we have several members of the governing body that this is their first budget cycle, and I'm joining that club. This is my first budget cycle here in Holmdel. First, I've provided you with a binder that has what is clearly marked as a draft with yesterday's date on it. This is the state budget document, which we are required to utilize. And I'm going to provide you with really just the mechanics of how the budget process and the budget document works. First of all, the budget will require an introduction, and then by state statute, there's a public hearing set 28 days, not less than 28 days after the budget is introduced. Anything to do with the budget in terms of its introduction and final adoption requires a majority of the full governing body. So that does require, in our case, in the township form, 3 affirmative votes to introduce the budget as well as to adopt it after the public hearing. So the budget document itself is it's a mechanism by which the governing body first anticipates revenues other than taxes. In our case, that's everything from license fees to state aid, and each one of these components of the budget has a background of either statutory or regulatory limitations. For instance, in general, we cannot anticipate revenues in this year's budget that are any greater than we realized last year. It's one of the mechanisms that has been established in New Jersey to ensure that budgets are realistic and that there is a very conservative approach to municipal finances. And that's also carried through into not only the operational side of municipal government and the budget, but also our debt limitations. There are limitations on the amount of debt that the municipality can burden taxpayers in the future with. So the budget document, as I said, first of all, will include an area that of expected and anticipated revenues. It also is as part of the budget process, we will levy taxes. This becomes the legal document by which property taxes are levied for municipal purposes. As I'm sure you're all aware, when it comes to the municipal tax bill that is issued by the township and taxpayers end up paying us the bill, that tax bill includes not only the taxes that are supporting our local purposes here in Holmdel, but also the school district and the county services as well, which the township collects and then turns over to those taxing entities. Those budgets are separate and distinct from our budget, and they have their own budget process that they follow in levying the amount of taxes that will be paid by local taxpayers. The budget also provides, through the appropriation process, that funds and authorizes spending for the coming year. And that's for all of our departments. As we go through, I'll briefly go through the budget document itself, and this covers everything from public safety, police, fire, emergency services, as well as public works services, the maintenance of roads, public facilities, our parks, and those sort of things. But from a practical standpoint, the budget document and the budget process reflects the policy and priorities of the governing body. We come to that final decision by way of consensus, compromise, and sometimes a little bit of heated discussions. But at the end of the day, it is a consensus document that requires and will be voted on and approved by the governing body. Looking through the budget document itself, the first several pages are information that is required, the budget notice, some summary information and explanations of prior year results, how much we budgeted last year, what was actually expended. There's also a budget message which is required to include certain calculations. Municipalities in New Jersey are subject to cap limits. There are two types of caps. There's a cap on the appropriations, the amount that we can spend year to year or year over year. There are also limitations on the an increase in the tax levy. We are required to conform with those cap limits, and I'll leave the details to Bill, the CFO, but this budget draft is in accordance with the cap limitations, and due to, I would say, prudent financial restraints and limits in the past, we have no cap concerns at present for this year or in the coming years going forward. In fact, I'm sure Bill will mention it, we are able to bank unneeded spending authorizations from prior years and utilize them. It's referred to as a cap bank, and we have utilized and have funds available from actually prior years that can be utilized in the current year if necessary. And again, I'll emphasize that they are not necessary in this budget cycle. In terms of probably the easiest way to provide a quick overview of the revenues is if you go through to sheet 11, and I guess first of all we'll say that you will find that sheet 11 is actually probably page 20, but it's just the way the budget document reads. So on sheet 11, it's titled Current Fund Anticipated Revenues, and this is a summary of the revenues. The first and most important item is the amount of surplus that we use. Surplus is essentially savings from prior year spending. Surplus is generated either by spending less than we anticipate or generating revenues in excess of what was anticipated. So you can see that in general, we are fairly level. The budget document itself is set up with a comparison, a year-to-year comparison. You see the 2023 column, and next to it is what was in last year's budget. And then the final number in this column shows what was actually anticipated. So you can see that the proposed or drafted budget for 2023 is fairly in line and level with the 2022 number. Likewise, the local revenues. Local revenues, again, are things like permit fees and fees that are generated at the local level. Section B, the state aid, we're actually anticipating a slight increase in the state aid levels, and it's somewhat of a misnomer in that what the state considers state aid, for the most part, are actually energy receipts tax. These are the taxes that residents in the township pay for utilities, and then they are collected at the state level, and then the state returns a portion back to us, and they call it a state aid. But these are really not state revenues in the sense that these are generated by local utility users and paid to their utility company, which is then paid to the state and then sent back to us. Only in New Jersey would they refer to that as state aid. Section C, this is our portion of our revenues that come from our permits and fees, and again, we are anticipating a level that is comparable to last year's. Here's an instance where you see what we're anticipating is somewhat less than what was realized last year. Specifically, last year we generated about $926,000 in permit fees. We are anticipating a slightly lower level this year, not for any reason other than to be very conservative in the preparation of the budget. This is an area where there is some fluctuality from year to year based on building levels, the economy. There are a number of factors. The next section is revenues where we have to get approval first to include them, and this is the shared service. I will say that I'm sure you're all aware there's a number of shared services that the township provides to other localities, and those revenues are identified here. Section F are additional private, they're listed as Section F, special items of general revenue, public and private revenues. These are grants. It is very common to see that number. You can see in this case, last year, we realized $1,034,000 in grants. This year, we are only anticipating, at this time, $113,000. That number will change as we go through the year as grant entitlements and authorizations come in. And those revenues are offset. Typically, grants carry with them that they are received for a specific purpose and they need to be spent for that specific purpose. So they have no real, what I would call, bottom line impact on our budget because what we receive is what we spend. So, and those are in the form of budget amendments that'll happen during the course of the year. So that's a significant change, but it is not a significant change that should be the cause for any alarm. And then the final item, Section G, these are other special items of revenue, which in this case we are anticipating much more than we did realize last year. And those are detailed on sheet 10. And that difference this year is primarily related to what I would call a one-year revenue jump. And this is related to the COVID funds that are classified and referred to as American Rescue Plan funds. And Bill will provide a little bit more detail on that. Then the additional revenues that we anticipate are what we'll receive from delinquent taxes, taxes that were unpaid as of the end of last year. And again, you see that that is fairly consistent with prior years. And then we get down to the magic number, which is what we anticipate to be raised from taxes. And this is really a fill-in number. If you think about it, we really start with what are the appropriations to provide services, subtract from that what our revenues will be other than taxes, and then this is sort of the fill-in number with the amount to be raised from taxes. And again, that number, based on preliminary discussions in finance, has been kept level with last year. The goal in the preparation of the draft, subject to final review by the governing body, was to hold the level of taxes equal or nearly equal to last year. And that has been done in this case. It actually is a few $100s less based on the current draft budget that's been prepared. So that's sort of the overview of the revenue side of the budget. The next several pages are the detailed appropriations by department, by function, and by state regulation. All appropriations are divided into two general categories: salary and wages or other expenses. In some cases, you'll see that the other expenses have been broken out a little bit more in detail, and that's really just a matter of providing transparency for some elements of the budget. And without going again into detail, there are other statutory requirements as to the portion of our budget that is subject to the cap limitations and portions that are not subject. We refer to those as inside the cap, outside the cap. In general, all operations with very few specific limitations are inside the cap. This year there have been a couple of items that were identified by the state through legislative authorization that have moved certain items specifically related to, I guess, Bill, the cost of medical health benefits have been moved or are allowed to be moved outside of cap.
They're allowed to be moved. On this document, I did not, for presentation purposes to start, because otherwise it'll just be more confusing.
Thank you for that clarification. And that runs through our operations. Then I'm going to jump immediately to sheet 22. I had mentioned earlier about the shared service and the fact that we anticipate the revenue on the revenue side. Sheet 22 identifies the appropriation. This is where we actually fund those shared services that we provide, which are detailed on sheet 22 and 22A. The next section of the budget, sheet 24, I referenced it earlier in terms of the grants, commonly referred to or technically referred to as public and private programs offset by revenues. This is a detail of the grants that, as of today, that we have been received either the grant itself or authorization that the grant will be coming. And again, this is the area of the budget that will be routinely amended as the year progresses and as those grants become specifically available. On sheet 26, we start the capital improvement section of the budget, which is where we provide, you'll see the appropriation for capital improvement fund. This is where we provide the required cash down payment for any capital expenditures that are expected to happen in the current year. The practice here at Holmdel has been to, has developed a capital plan on an annual basis that is authorized specifically by bond ordinance, and any bond ordinance carries with it a requirement of providing a, quote, 5% down payment. This is the area of the budget where we provide that 5% down payment so that we can proceed with the capital plan as we develop that in the year. Sheet 27 is our debt service based on our existing level of authorized debt. You see some of our debt is will be paid down through the bond principal. That is long-term financing that has been in place for several years. There's also the principal of bond anticipation notes. That's essentially short-term financing that has been, we don't go to permanent bonding. We've done some short-term notes, and again, Bill can provide details or on that aspect. But this is where we pay down our debt on a year-to-year basis, as well as the interest costs related to that previously authorized debt. The rest really then goes into the other aspects of our reserve for uncollected taxes. It's a big number on sheet 29, $1.2 million. The reserve for uncollected taxes is a number that is, it's a non-spending appropriation that is reserved and is reflecting the fact that while we may not collect all their taxes in the current year, we are obligated to pay the county and the school districts for their taxes. So this represents that percentage of taxes that are left unpaid by taxpayers at the end of the year. We will collect it in the subsequent year, but this is again, it's a non-spending appropriation that is another method or element of the conservative nature of New Jersey municipal financing that makes sure that we have the funds available to pay to the county and the school district, even though not all taxpayers have paid their taxes on time. The other components of this municipal budget, and by the way, that concludes the portion of the budget that is funded by tax revenues. Our budget also includes two specific utilities. Our sewer utility, which I'll emphasize again, is not funded by tax dollars, but rather it is funded by utility fees that are generated from the utility users. So in our case, our sewer utility is a $3.6 million operation, most of which is paid. We collect the sewage, and then we ship it for treatment to Bayshore Regional Sewage Authority, and we pay them for that. And those costs are reflected in the utility budget on both the revenue side and the appropriation side. Likewise, on sheet 31 is our swim pool utility. The swim pool was established as a self-funding operation, not only the operating cost on a year-to-year basis, but also the capital cost of maintaining the facility itself, and that is funded exclusively by the revenues generated from the swim pool itself. Additionally, this budget includes and recognizes the Open Space Trust for technical reasons, I will point out that it is the Open Space, Recreation, Farmland, and Historic Preservation Trust Fund. That is a dedicated trust fund that is funded by the open space tax that is imposed on local property taxpayers. That is separate and distinct from the county open space tax, which is similarly structured. But in this is the sheet 43 is the portion of our budget where we establish both the revenue as well as the appropriation for the open space trust. And then the final section of the municipal financial operations is our recreation trust. Most of our recreation programs and activities are self-funded, and that's in the form of a recreation trust fund that is not reflected in our budget, although for internal financial control purposes, we do establish a spending plan. We will call it appropriations, but again, those expenditures are based on the revenues that come in from the recreation programs. So that's the overview of the budget document and what it represents. Bill, I think this is the time where I ask you to go over the portions of the draft budget that have been highlighted to reflect any significant changes from last year's spending authorizations.
Thank you, Jay.
And Jay, just for clarification for, I guess, the folks watching at home, both the sewer authority and the swim club are self-funded operations, correct?
That's correct. They are self-funded.
Ready?
Thank you very much, Jay. Bill, it's your time to shine.
Thank you. If we go back, as Jay was mentioning, this the very conservative method of budgeting. This goes back to the 1930s. It's been very successful in New Jersey. New Jersey's bond ratings for most of the municipalities are very high. If you got, there's 1,500 jurisdictions in New Jersey, which includes towns, school boards, authorities, counties. Not one of them's ever gone bankrupt. If you've heard other towns, other cities, Detroit, the ones in New York State and California, this is a very conservative method, and it's worked very well since the 1930s, and it's probably not going to change at all. Again, this is the budget that has been presented by administration. This budget does not include any new positions at all. It also, the amount to be raised by taxation is staying the same, and the services that we are giving to the taxpayers are consistent with previous year. If we look at sheet 4 of the budget, you'll see the amount of surplus anticipated. Last year it was $5,080,000. This year it's $5,127,000. Again, what we are trying to do here, attempt to maintain a healthy fund balance. This gives us the cash flow and the ability to pay the county taxes and school taxes on a timely basis. Again, if we use all of our fund balance, we'd be having to borrow funds, tax anticipation notes, or somewhere else to be able to pay the school and county taxes timely. Also, by saving this, we're also able to lend some of the money to the other funds. If you remember, last year we borrowed the bond anticipation note for the swim club came from the current fund. So we're saving interest cost and cost needed to pay for the issuance of the bonds. If you go back to 2018, our fund balance after the budget was adopted was 0. We used every penny we had. At the end of this budget year, it's anticipated to be $2,581,000 left in fund balance. If we look at sheet 10.
Bill, can I ask a question, or do you want to go through the whole thing?
No,
and
you
then
can
we
ask it whenever you
questions?
want.
Okay. So I just have 2 quick questions. Number one, what do we do with the with our surplus? Where is that money? Like, what do you do with it? Is it just in a like in a money market? Is it in just a open fund that you?
It's just sitting in the bank, basically.
Okay.
And again, we did invest some of it into a bond anticipation note for the swim club last year.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. And the other question I have is the pilot line here. Again, this year our anticipated budget is much less and very conservative in regards to our realized cash that we collect. And again, are you doing that just because of the uncertainty of the economy, or?
That is what's generating most of our fund balance. So if we brought that to the max, it would impact the tax rate, but then again, our cash flow would be down to basically nothing.
Okay.
So we deliberately under anticipate the revenue so that we do have a fund balance.
Thank you. I just wanted the clarification. Thank you,
Okay.
Bill.
I'm sorry, just one quick question. Bill, where is that 2 million number on the documents you referenced?
It's not on there. No. Actually, it may hold on. It may show on sheet 38. Let's see if it does. Yeah, try to get my mouse not working. On 39, yeah, the bottom right of 39. You see what the fund balance end of the year was, 7,708,000. We're using 5,127,000 to be 2.5 million, which is basically our cash flow.
Thank you, Bill.
Yep. Go back to the sheet. Sheet 10. Received from the federal government under the American Rescue Plan, $1,751,000. $500,000 was used for the sewer system improvement ordinance last year. $294,250 was used for the stormwater management study, which left a balance of $956,000. The law was changed so that we could use this money to support our budget.
Yeah, we're not following you, Bill.
Bill, on
Sheet 10.
Yeah, we're on sheet 10, and we've got the American Rescue Plan 956, 959.
Yeah,
I
I'm just
wasn't
going
following
through.
the rest of the numbers you were saying.
Yeah, that
sorry.
was what the total, what we received, $1,751,000 what the total we received from the federal government. Of that, we've used $500,000 to support the sewer bond ordinance from last year. And for the stormwater management study, we spent $294,250, which left us the balance of $956,000. Yeah. And they changed the law to let us anticipate that as regular revenue in the budget, which we are doing at this point in time. Now, this is a one-time piece of revenue. Again, if you remember, we left another $500,000 in fund balance, and that'll take care of some of this shortfall next year. Sheet 11 shows, again, Jay mentioned that, the amount to be raised is pretty close to last year, a couple $100 less. Sheet 12, these are the various line items of appropriations. I'm just going to go over the major changes. Administrator's office, 315 is what we're budgeting this year. After modified last year was $256,000. This again is changing because we do have a full-time administrator. Last year, the funds from the 356 to the 256 were transferred to other line items when needed. Look at finance, salaries and wages, 146. It was budgeted at 201. Some was transferred, making 165. Again, we're down substantially in that line item. In 2020, the budget was $215,000. We'd mentioned previously the fact that there is a need for somebody part-time in that office. That has not been funded in the budget, but there is a shortage. We had mentioned that in some internal control reports we went over at some point. The finance administration other expenses is down to $17,000. Last year we brought it up from $14,000 to $31,000. A lot of that was used for the debt issuance costs. We have the option of either expending it or putting it against a capital ordinance, and we chose to expend it last year. The IT administration from 156 to 127. We did hire a second IT person in July of last year. This 156 is reflecting a full-time position in that office. IT other expenses, there's a number of issues that has to be resolved. A lot of it has to do, with current IT situation. We have the Power DMS software, Office 365 accounts. Everybody will have them. There's a number of people that don't have it right now. Multi-factor security for all workstations. And there's also going to be some other email accounts for planning and zoning board members. Assessment of taxes, salaries, and wages. Again, that's most of that increase is at $10,000. That for the changes in the pilot calculation. Miscellaneous other expenses. Let's see what that was for. The Monmouth County assessment program, that was budgeted every couple years. We're now going to put a certain amount in the budget each. That's done every couple years. Instead, we're just going to put it in every year's budget so we have little amounts. We don't just have a spike every 5 years. Collection of taxes, that's going up. Most of that, again, is for the difference in the pilot calculation. Public buildings and grounds, the 259 is a more realistic number. Again, 321, we did have some repairs that had to be done, especially to the HVAC system in the building. Next page on 14, the planning board salaries. That was both for the planning board secretary and the zoning board secretary. With having one secretary for both boards now, that basically cut that line item in half. Zoning Board of Adjustment from 21,450 to 6,500. Again, there's some legal issues there that we're planning for. And the health insurance going from 1,495,000 to 1,338,838. That's the 22% increase in the state health benefits. Again, we had looked at a number of different options. Our claim rate is at 1.3, so even if we went out to the public, we'd probably still be paying more than we're paying now.
How is that number in general, Bill, just the 1.3?
They're all different towns. I mean, they're all different. 1.3, we're basically making out because we're paying 30% less than what the claims are right now.
If I may, just to put that into perspective, I think there's been significant discussion over the last 6 to 8 months on the state health benefits plan and the increases. Currently, the current rates provide that our coverage costs on an annual basis range from, on the low end, $15,000 per employee for single coverage to a high of over $40,000 for full family coverage under the state health benefits plan.
And again, that's why we went to the state health benefits plan a couple of years ago, because of our experience rating was so high. We were saving substantial money by going over to the state. On sheet 15, you'll see the breakdown for police salaries and wages. We split that a little bit. We took the non-officers away from the officers to give us a better, concept of what the costs are for. The police is broken down to two sections this year: the $5,293,000 and the $956,000, which is the ARPA funds. The increase in the police salaries and wages is 3.33%, which is the contractual increases. The first aid organization was $65,000. They have asked for an increase up to $125,000.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Yes, sir. You have a question on that item? Yeah, I think we're just going to do public comment at the end, Mr. T. Yes, sorry about that. Bill, quick question.
Sure.
The 956, where was that?
That was
Not seeing it last year.
Yeah, that was the federal aid for the American Rescue Plan. We have to designate a specific line item we're going to use it for. So that's a state requirement. Central repair facility, that, there's an issue with that line. I'm not gonna talk about, that has to be changed a little bit. The snow, 440, we roughly budget 440 every year. Obviously, last year we didn't have any snow. We don't know what's coming on in the fall, later on in November, December. 440 is actually what we've budgeted in the past, so we're gonna keep that there just in case. And we may get some good buys on salt if we need it at the end of the year, if it's, nobody's buying it.
Quick question. So, do we know what was what the realized number was for last year on that?
What was spent?
Yeah.
Yeah, 189. It's next
Is
to
that
the
it right there?
316.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's right in
that's-
front of me.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you, Bill.
And if I may, on that subject, that is one of the very few line items where we do have a, either referred to as a snow removal trust, but this is one line where we are able to set aside money for future years, recognizing the fact that snow removal in particular, it's also available for use in the event of storms, but there is great variation from year to year. So this is one of the very few line items where we can actually reserve funds that are unspent from one year and put them aside for, unforeseen snow events or storm events in subsequent years.
Thank you, Jay.
And Jay, I think you just touched on it, but can one of you guys just elaborate as far as what was spent for that 189? If there was no snow, just want to make sure people understand what we are spending that on.
I can look that up. If you can wait, I'll look it up. Yeah, and probably a lot of it was salt, because there were some good deals on that, so it'd be probably up to the ceiling with salt. On the next sheet, we, recreation, again, going back to 2020 and COVID, we had the Recreation Trust Fund, which had substantial sum of money in it, about $184,000. That ended up being decimated because we had nowhere to charge some of the recreation salaries. So we charge them all there, and there's no pool revenue either. So the Recreation Trust, which at that point had $184,000 at the end of 2022, is now down to $378,000. So what we decided to do was to actually delineate it in the budget. That's the Recreation Department salaries of $190,000 and $13,000. That's mainly for the porta-johns at the different parks. Uniform fire safety in the bottom from 240 to 173. They're doing a lot more inspections. The part-timers are working a lot more hours. Now we are generating revenue, to cover that. Construction official, next page, 33,800 to 20,000. I think about 10 to 12,000 of that's for archiving, additional archiving some of the papers upstairs.
And Bill, just the community development department, that's also a self-funded operation largely, right? So to your point
Yes.
about fire raising more money, that can go back into the department to bolster employment or whatever it may be, but it's,
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Next one on the water. The water, 70,000, and because compared to 25 or 45, there's obviously some problems with the bills we're getting. The bills did not have a lot of accounts on it, and I guess they caught up with us. And 70,000 is a more realistic number. They found out that somehow they were just not billing us for it. So I don't know. Accumulated absences. Again, we're allowed to put money aside for accumulated absences. This has, for the most part, for years have gone unfunded. As of currently December 31st, our liability for that's $288,000. What we've been doing in the past, for the most part, is charging it against a budget line item. And what happens then is, we're budgeting for what the salaries, and if we get another 15, 20, or 30,000 hitting, we have to make a transfer. So we're putting the money aside for what the liability actually is, so we have the funds available, we can charge that reserve. And every year we'll try to up that just to make sure we have enough to cover that. Sheet 19, two biggest things here is the pension, the public employees retirement system. That's going up by 12.32%. Again, that's by a state number from the pension system. And the Police and fire, they're going up by 8.62% this year.
What was the other one, Bill?
I'm sorry.
Second one?
The police and fire pension.
What was that amount?
That's going up, hold on. 166,124, 8.62%.
And these are all contractually obligated, correct?
We're required to be in the state pension system, and, this is based upon their actuarial calculations every year. And they're actually 2 years behind. So they're not, these are the numbers going back to 2021. Next is sheet 22. The class 3 SLEOs, this is a shared service agreement with the state, with the Board of Education. That's dropping this year again because of our agreement with them. It's dropping 72,000. The township is absorbing more of the cost this year.
And Mayor, on that note, this does reflect the current contract with the Board of Education. It was a 5-year agreement with the township, with the amount to be paid by each party changing each year. I know there has been some discussion and recommendation that be reviewed. So this is one of the decision points for the governing body to consider. While the whatever change there could be significant relative to the total amount of this appropriation, whatever change is made, we would be able to accommodate within the confines of the draft budget and maintaining a level of tax amount to be raised from taxation, again, subject to determination by the governing body.
Now, Bill, did you say that number, our number, our participation is going up, but it looks like this number is going down this year?
He said down.
Yeah, well, the budget line item is going down. So the cost for us is now going to show up in the police salaries and wage account line item. But this is only for the Board of Ed share on this page.
No,
Their portion's going down. Yeah, this is the shared service. This is what Holmdel Township Board of Ed's paying us. Again, it's not always 300,000 or 228. Depends on how many hours the officer actually works in the school. Next numbers are in sheet 26. Capital Improvement Fund, that's the 5% hard cash down payment that we're required to for any capital ordinance. That will give us enough for $5 million worth of capital improvements, and this does not expire. This goes into the capital fund, so it's just not a one-year number. If we have money in there, it can be used in the future. The $1 million below that, that was a one-time item last year. If you recall, the township had utilized, which they're allowed to by statute, to fund the current fund budget of close to $1 million over a period of time from the pool fund, and this was the return for the improvements to the pool.
And we're whole on that now, right?
Yes. Sheet 27 reflects $700,000 for a bond anticipation notes. These are the notes that we borrowed last year from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Again, we're going to make a payment. Remember, we're trying to keep the debt service level, and also so that we won't have the next bond sale that our total debt service is level. The issue we had last year, we were trying to have roughly about $3.5 million of new debt issued each year. Last year we issued $5.5 million, so a little bit ahead of where we should be. So we're going to try to pay a portion of that down. That was all the current fund. Next one is on sheet 32 for the sewer fund. One of the items we have here, again, the only thing required to have here is other expenses, and other expenses is very, can have everything and their brother in there. So what we've done is we've ripped out the two operating costs, the biggest operating cost, the sewage treatment that goes to the Bayshore Regional Sewage Authority, and the shared service with Manasquan River Regional Sewage Authority. So they're just been removed from the number above, so at least we can better track majority of our other expenses.
Bill, if I may, just while you're on that page, we've also added an appropriation, a new appropriation in 2023 for the sewer utility capital outlay. This is essentially an undefined funding authorization that is there for any unanticipated repairs that may be necessitated during the coming year. The reality is that when it comes to utility operations, much of the facilities and infrastructure is underground. It is often the case that when something does go bad, it is not cheap. So having the $75,000 as capital outlay, with luck, we won't need to spend it, but it is just, again, a good planning tool as well as conservative to have the funding in place so that in the need of it, we don't have to do any kind of emergency.
Thank you. And then one other quick question I have is, obviously we're aware that the sewer system or the sewer budget is self-funding, but is there always anticipated, or are there additional funds like excess that comes in from what it costs us to run the system from what we collect to cover other administrative fees or anything like that, Bill?
Yes, that basically goes to the fund balance. So we anticipated $2,595,000. We received revenue of $3,151,000. Again, it's just that goes to our fund balance. We use it to stabilize, so we don't have to raise the rates that often.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
And Mayor, on that note, it is worth mentioning as well that the utility fund, we include certain expenses that are really allocations. A portion of the public works salaries and wages are covered under the salary and wages listed here. Likewise, we take it's really an allocation based on best estimates of insurance costs, overhead costs that may not be specifically billed to the utility, but they are funded through the utility by this allocation.
Also in 32B, we have the payment of bond anticipation note and the interest on the notes. Again, those are the notes that were issued from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. They were at 1.66% interest, and we're going to make a pay down of that in 2023, a portion of that. Next big change is on 32B, which is the swimming pool. Again, just as we had in the sewer trust, we have $15,000 for capital outlay for needed capital repairs that may or may not occur during the year. We also have a payment of the bond anticipation note. This note was issued from the current fund for $42,000, and we're going to make a payment down back to the current fund for $42,000 this year. We've also allocated a portion of the PERS to this fund that never was before. Again, there is some cost for the 2 employees in the recreation department that are charged here, and the actual pension cost for them should be included in this fund. Those are all the comments I have. If anybody has any additional questions.
And Mayor, if I may just summarize or reemphasize again that this budget is has been drafted and is presented on the basis of maintaining the current level of employment, full-time and part-time employment. There have been requests in a number of departments for additional personnel that we will either deal separately. I know that'll come up later today. But this reflects current levels, and if there is any desire or authorization from the governing body, those would be additional costs added to this draft budget.
Hey, Jay, Bill said on community development on page 14, line item that we are eliminating a zoning board position.
No, we did. Yeah, we have one secretary now for both boards instead
So
of 2.
we eliminated one.
Yeah.
Same person, secretary for each.
Okay.
Yeah, we used
Yeah,
to have a
when-
secretary for both boards. Now we just have one secretary for the 2 boards.
And Steve has agreed to that?
Well,
We have-
he has not agreed to it. As I said, this budget reflects current levels. The community development request included that additional position as well as an additional, or I guess I'll call it, converting an existing part-time inspector to a full-time position. So neither one of those are reflected in this draft.
Bill, any insight on current interest rates for bonds for when we discuss any capital improvements?
I just saw something yesterday, but they're fluctuating about 4%. You know, again, what I would recommend is if we have the funds and if we're going to borrow stuff again, let's borrow it from ourselves. Or at this point, it's cheaper because we don't incur any of the costs. So as long as we have the funds, we can borrow from ourselves. If not, we can just go out because we are AAA rated. We could go out to the market, but.
And Bill, just a quick question on that. Obviously, COVID had those numbers super low. Historically, what would you say is the average? If it's 4% today, historically, what would you put that at?
For long term, it's usually between 4 and 5. For government, yeah, between 4 and 5. It's been the long term trend.
So it's back where it's kind of been, you're saying?
Today, yes. I mean, it changes constantly. Yeah, it's just, yeah. They're tax free, so they're usually between 4 and 5.
Is there any other questions by any of the board members? Okay, seeing none. Bill, thank you very much for that overview.
Okay.
And Jay, at this time, you want to take back over and
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I believe the chief is here. We've asked the chief to join us. Obviously, the police department and public safety is a critical component of the township's operations as well as the budget. So I think the chief wants the opportunity to at least answer any questions. And again, there have been requests for additional personnel that we will more than likely address in an appropriate setting in detail.
thank you, Jay. Chief, would you like to come up with your staff at this time and give us a presentation or give us an overview of your upcoming requests?
Sure. Good morning, Mayor, Township Committee, Administrator.
Mayor, I don't know, did you need to use the presentation at any?
No.
Okay. I was gonna say, you know, a couple minutes to set up, but otherwise, Bill, you wanna provide the opportunity for the chief to?
Yeah, I'll just.
With me, I have Captain Ackerson and Captain Piggott.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Bill. And there's another chair over here if you wanted to bring it over, or, you know, whatever's best for you guys. So obviously, Chief, you know, one of our, biggest concerns in town is public safety, and not to say that there's anything abnormal in Holmdel than any other challenges that other towns in the county or the state are experiencing. But there's always concerns from residents about their safety in regards to car thefts and home burglaries, and we're very confident that you and your staff are always doing everything that you can to address these issues. But again, we want to give you the opportunity to see for upcoming year what other resources or any other tools that you need to continue doing the great job that you do.
Well, the main thing that we're asking for this year, is it on?
Yeah, just to talk into it for the live.
Okay. The main thing that we're asking for in this budget is an increase in our manpower. For the past for the past 25 years, we've been at around 43 officers, 43 sworn police officers, and what we're asking for right now is 4 additional officers. We work with 4 squads on patrol. In those squads, we have 1 sergeant and 6 patrolmen on a squad. The officers work 12-hour shifts, so we've got that split up in half. 2 shifts are working, 1 days, 1 nights, and then there's 2 separate sides. And what we want to do is we have a 4-man minimum that we work with. That's the lowest amount of officers that we have on patrol that we'll go down to. And that's taken into consideration the vacation time, comp time that officers are given contractually. So we'll go down to a 4-man minimum. By putting 1 more officer on each one of the squads, we'll bring our manpower up, and we'll have a 5-man. At that point, we'll have a 5-man minimum. That's what we're trying to get to. We tried to do that, and we were looking to do that back a number of years ago. Back in 2010, we had gone up to 44 officers, and we were asking for 2 additional at that time. And then we had all the financial issues and all. We had officers that retired, and we didn't replace them, and we've stayed since that time at our 43 police officers. So at this point in time, with the increase in the town size, the different building that we have going on, the success that we have at Bell Works, which is fantastic for the town, but it is generating a lot more work and calls for the police department. So that's why we are trying to get to the point where we have each one of our shifts has 7 officers on it. We can still give our 2 officers off and have a 5-man minimum. That's the reason why we want to put 4 officers on. And again, by putting them on now, we're not going to realize those officers until sometime probably into next year. We'll put them on. They have to go through a police academy. Once they come out of the academy, the officers are going to have to go through the field training program. So we're not going to really have them actually on the road and until sometime end of this year, early next year. Do you have anything?
In addition to that, is there anything else?
Well, in addition to the additional officers that we want, we do want to promote 2 more sergeants so that in those shifts with those officers, we'll have 2 sergeants on each shift. This way, if a sergeant has time off, we'll have each shift will be covered by a supervisor. We won't run into we won't run into as many times as we have an officer in charge that's not a sergeant that's running the shift. And again, it'll still keep our shifts at seven people on each shift. So it'll give us our 5-man minimum. The other thing that I just wanted to mention that we would like to do for this year, and it would be part of our capital budget, but we're almost complete with our locker room downstairs, the renovation of the locker room, and it's come along fantastic, and we thank the township because it was way overdue. We're working temporarily out of a storage room that we had downstairs that originally when the building was built, it was supposed to be an indoor range that was never made. That room where we have the temporary locker room now, once we're out of there and we're in our locker room, we'd like to make that another training room downstairs for our officers. The training would be, we'll have it padded, both on the walls and the floor, where our officers can go down and do unarmed defense, and a number of other types of training that they're doing. They're actually, officers now are doing a lot more of that even in the police academy, and we want to make sure we continue that along with our de-escalation training and unarmed training for our officers, and have it here in our building, because the amount of time and the amount of training that we're mandated to do, it would be much better for us to be able to do it here in the building than having to send officers out to be trained off-site. And we're lucky enough to have a couple of our officers here. One of our lieutenants that is actually certified as a unarmed trainer and I don't know what black belt he is in jiu-jitsu. So we're able to do that training ourselves.
Is that training currently costing us money, Chief, when we go outside?
When we go outside, but we're still using him. We're using our lieutenant now to work with our officers, but not as much as we'd like to. If we had our own facility downstairs, he could actually work with them, pull a couple guys off of shift, go down, and work with them and give them more training.
The frequency would be able to increase by having this room in town hall. You'd be able to have guys train while they're working for an hour here or there. And the biggest thing with unarmed self-defense, defensive tactics, jiu-jitsu is the more you do it, the better you get at it. And so doing it 1 or 2 times a year, 3 times a year, really doesn't give officers the ability to get proficient at it and for it to really be impactful. So the way to accomplish that is have it where we can get the guys there a lot more often, the officers there a lot more often, let them train, let them get proficient in it, and it could pay dividends in the future.
So the one question I would have in that, and I'm not opposed to the idea, but is it something that they're currently doing now, or is it something that's mandated, or is it more voluntary?
It's a lot of the training now. It's actually mandated through the Attorney General's office with the unarmed and the de-escalation training, and they're actually moving into the police academies and starting with the jiu-jitsu training. So it's starting to really move toward a lot more being mandated in that type of training.
Okay.
And with the police licensing that's going to be coming forward at some point this year, it looks like they're going to be requiring it to be, not sure exactly how much yet, but at least an increase in, or a requirement to complete it. So now I think they're doing 80 hours in the academy, which they've just recently passed and started doing. That's a significant amount of time in the academy, especially with all the other competing interests that they have to go against. So the PTC realizes how important it is, and how again, this is one of those things for de-escalation and using less force. This is all driving towards that point. So if we can, again, be proficient at that, kind of stay a little bit ahead of the curve. It probably will be required at some point this year. We'll already have a facility that's able to accommodate that in-house.
Okay, thank you. And if just for purposes of the TC, if we discuss this, and it's something that we agree with and move forward on, would there be a plan? Not a plan, but would there be would you make it so that they were required to do this and utilize the facility and have scheduled classes, not where it's just voluntary, where they can go when they feel like it, right? It would be more of a structured thing where officers would be required to do this, right?
Absolutely, it's going to be. It will be mandatory training for the officers.
Okay, and then just from my own knowledge, when do we anticipate being in the new locker room and actually completed and moved out of the temporary?
Early May is
Good.
what they're calling it.
Okay.
It's almost complete. All they have to do now is set the lockers, and they're finishing up a few things. They've done moved along very well with that project. The last one of the last big items that I'm just going to have the captain go over because that's his ballpark is the change of the video cameras in our vehicles, which we've already. Some of this we've already started switching over and all, but
Yeah, that's already been budgeted, right? I think I saw that in the budget, or is that proposed? Is that separate piece of paper?
Yes, Mayor, and actually, if I may, the way I've approached the capital requests is we've asked departments to identify capital needs in the current year and future years with the goal of, in my mind anyway, the priorities are replacing existing equipment first. And I'd ask the chief to highlight any of the new equipment that we're looking at, or in this case, it is a replacement cameras in the vehicles, but it is fairly significant to provide some additional information on that. And by the way, our format will be that after some of the departmental requests are reviewed and the governing body has an opportunity to ask questions and understand a little bit more fully, we will be going through the capital request overall, over all the departments within the township.
Thank you, Jay. Go ahead, Captain, if you wanted to.
Yeah, just briefly, the in-car camera system that we currently use, we have body-worn cameras and we have in-car cameras. The in-car cameras system we've had for since before I started 24 years ago, and they were VHS videotapes, and we use those. And now we're at a little bit more technologically advanced, and we're utilizing the in-car cameras with SD cards, and they automatically download Wi-Fi. So what we're looking to do is that system we have now is basically almost at end of life. We're having some issues with the equipment. It's failing. We have to replace it, and we don't want to invest in this older failing technology. We want to bring it up to date to what we're using with the Axon. We currently we're using Axon body-worn cameras. So by purchasing this Axon Fleet in-car camera system, we'd replace the in-car cameras and the system that we currently use with Axon. And that would also, how that's going to save us time, and it's a better product, and it's newer, and it's the equipment's not going to fail as much, but it's also going to allow us to be more efficient when we have to deal with the video, which is really the larger part of this whole scenario. Is it's easy to go and record the video, but it's a lot more difficult to deal with the video on the backside. So we actually have to, for discovery purposes, for Oprah purposes, we have to take that video. Mike's very familiar with this process because we speak very often on it, and we have to take it. We have to redact it. We have to watch the entire video. So if 4 officers show up to a 1-hour call, that's 4 hours of video we have to watch, and then we have to redact personal identifying information, any number of things that we can't release to the public. So that takes time and manpower for us to do that. And this would unify the Fleet in-car system and the Axon body camera into one actual unit, one company, one program that we would go to manage all this, to redact it, to send links for download to the prosecutor's office. It's a lot more clean. It's a cleaner environment and an easier system to utilize. So that would save us some money on the backside of that as well.
What is the system in the cars currently, Captain? Is it also Axon or no?
No. Yeah, we have L3 Safe Fleet. They've changed their name a couple of times. They've been bought by different companies, but they're not up to the level where Axon is. They haven't been able to accomplish that. So we're looking to move on. And again, we started with Axon body-worn cameras. The next step is the in-car camera system, as well as the interview room that we currently use is L3 Safe Fleet. So if we took that and made that upgrade as well, we would tie everything into one ecosystem, and it would be much easier to manage the video.
Thank you for that. And then I'm sure the whole committee will be reviewing this clearly. And then the only question that I had is, and I didn't read this yet, your budget narrative, but have we done a cost analysis on what they're proposing as far as that or not yet?
We have not done a detailed cost analysis. Part of it is that obviously when in terms of any expansion of staff, as the chief indicated, it really wouldn't hit, the full cost wouldn't be incurred in the current year because we're talking about implementation during the second half of the year. But we've done some preliminary numbers on that timing. Obviously the real cost hits next year when it's a full year cost.
Thank you, Jay. Anything else, Chief?
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions for the police, the chief and his staff?
Axon cameras that you're referring to, the Axon system, is that the system that's customarily used by the other municipalities, or
It really depends on the agency. The state police are using Axon. Other agencies throughout the state are using Axon as well. But like anything in law enforcement with technology, they're all over the place. We've actually done an evaluation, a testing and evaluation when we did the body cam purchase and the grant that we did a few years back. And we evaluated, I think, 5 or 6 of the top companies that offered this solution, and Axon was by far the best, most easy to use, and most reliable, and just best for us. So that's why we decided to invest in that ecosystem. And now, again, we're just as the next step to move forward and keep going in that direction.
Just go over the TASER. All right, there's one other item on, for the capital that we just want to touch base on is our, the TASER replacement, which we've already started. But I want to hit on that, and the captain will go over that one also.
So one of the things we're also asking for, and we're looking to do this year, and you'll see when you read the budget narrative, the ideas we have with increasing manpower and supervision, training, which is, by far one of the most important aspects of policing these days. But the TASER and virtual reality training system, it's actually 2 things in one. Again, it's an Axon product. We currently utilize their TASERs and have for a number of years. Officers carry them and utilize them on shifts. We're looking to replace those TASERs because there are newer versions that are approved by the Attorney General that we can use in New Jersey, and the ones we have are outdated, and they just need to be updated with the better technology. They operate better. There are different options in utilizing them. And one of the things we identified when we were reviewing this was to have, we would like to have some more training on using the TASERs. We do certifications, we do yearly qualifications, but again, same idea with the jiu-jitsu and self-defense tactics that we do. We need to have more training, and virtually everyone in the field of law enforcement and even outside of it is saying officers need more training. Studies have been done, and it's just continually is what we hear. So we're trying to accomplish that by pushing these different things and allowing us to do more training while we're working, while we're there. If we take a guy away for 45 minutes or a police officer away for 45 minutes, an hour, and do some training while they're working, we can multiply the amount of training time that we get in a year, where we don't have to take them off the road for the whole day. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. So this system would allow us to have new TASERs, but also there's a virtual reality training component to it, which allows us to train with utilizing the TASER. So we'd get more hands-on experience. Our officers would get more ability to do scenarios and test the system and utilize it in training, and instead of once or twice a year for qualifications. So that would increase our ability. And then these virtual reality training system that Axon also has included other training scenarios. So there's domestic violence training, and they're supposed to implement ICAT and ABLE training, which are 2 other requirements for us to do from the AG now. So this is something that will allow us to expand training and be more proficient with one of the weapons that we do carry. And they are also implementing firearm aspect of the training, so you'll be able to choose between levels of force when you're accomplishing that training. So it's gonna be amazing for our officers to have that ability.
And that's another area that we're going to use the training room, new training room that we want to put downstairs for that virtual training also.
Thank you very much. Have you ever considered using any of the community service volunteers for the TASER training or anything like that? Just a thought, just an idea there. Yeah, Rocco, do you have another question?
Yeah, so Captain, I just want to make sure I understand on the in-car cameras. I'm going to sort of recite back the way I understand it, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Sure.
The updated cameras are going to basically create efficiencies when you guys are reviewing footage, right? It's going to save you time, right? At the end of the day, when you're reviewing footage, when you have to redact things for legal purposes, et cetera, is one of the outcomes of those efficiencies created that the officers will be able to spend more time in the field? I guess is what I'm asking. Is there a direct impact to our presence, as opposed to the bunch of guys in the back room trying to hack this stuff together in an antiquated fashion?
Possibility, but I think the more it's gonna decrease the amount of manpower we need to address those types of redacting videos. We don't need as many people to be able to do that. It will be less manpower. So yes, not necessarily directly, because the officers aren't always redacting their own videos, but personnel in the department are. So that will decrease the amount of time they have to spend on that and allow them to spend time on something more important.
Thank you.
The issue with the officers and the body-worn cameras or the in-car cameras is if they're on a call, they're handling a call, whether it be use of force or domestic violence, so many calls that they handle because they do have the camera rolling at all times. What does take time for officers, I don't care what kind of system we have, is they do have to review that before they write their reports also to make sure that they're not missing anything. So that does take time, and that is another reason why we want to try to go to the 5-man minimum to give us the guys out on the road.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I think the way it was explained to me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is that every time that there is an arrest or an altercation or anything, that those tapes have to be reviewed throughout the ranks. And I think any way we could help streamline that and then make it more efficient, it would reduce, I guess, manpower hours throughout not just the officer, the arresting officer, but throughout the command staff as they prepare reports, and if that is litigated, there's another level of scrutiny, right, that goes throughout these tapes. And I think any way we could help streamline that, it helps the department, I think, in the long run.
And it will save some time, where one aspect of some time savings for officers utilizing it will be they're able to download the video from the road. So they won't have to come into headquarters to hook up to Wi-Fi to download it. It'll be over 4G, Verizon, whoever we use, network. And so they won't have to come in to download video. It'll be available pretty instantly for review by command. So if there's some type of review that needs to take place prior to them coming in, that can be downloaded, ingested by the system, and viewed without even taking the officer off the road. So there is some time saving there as well.
Thank you. And then one other thing I wanted to ask or mention, and not to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity to comment on something. At one of our last public meetings, there was a few members from the public that spoke slightly critical in regards to the license plate readers that we have throughout town or in town. This is something that this committee had committed to spend, money on to again provide the PD with all the resources and tools that they need to help do their job efficiently, keep the community as safe as possible. And I think it would be good if there's any way that you could just respond to that and to the TC, so that we're again informed properly, and I know we're confident that that the PD is doing everything that they can. But if you could just maybe make a comment on the fact of the license plate readers and how, and not to give specific information, because I know some of it is private or classified, but if you could just educate us again, or make a comment on the fact that how these are helping you, and if they do help with providing security to the community.
Well, the plate readers, how we use them and how they're used and how they assist us is twofold. With the idea for the guys that are coming in and stealing cars and breaking into houses now to try to get fobs, a lot of times they're using stolen cars. They've been back in our areas in the same stolen car. Could be 2 or 3 nights in a row, maybe more. In that situation, they come by a plate reader and would hit on and notify us that we have a stolen car in the area. Because we're having these thefts, we know that it's more than likely these guys, and they're down near Holmdel Road and 520. So we have our guys, even the ones that are working on the north side of town, hey, get our cars down there, start getting in those developments in there and see if we can find this car that popped up as a stolen vehicle. That's how we're looking at it, to try to help us with with the stolen vehicles. And then on other on other crimes like home burglaries and stuff that has nothing to do with these guys, the car could go by there, and at some point, we're able to pull that information and look and solve a crime that's happened, whether it be a theft, a burglary, a shoplifting, or whatever. We have a description of a car, but we pull it up and start going through the files on the plate readers. Anything else that you can think of?
In the next newsletter, there'll be an article from the police department explaining a little bit more in detail. We realize there are some of these questions and concerns, so we put it out so we could address some of those issues with as much information as we would be able to put out, and explain a little bit about the process of how it works, a little bit about how we access the files and when, and so privacy is addressed and all those concerns. So, but it gives us, just to clarify, one of the questions I know was asked, it does immediately notify us that a stolen vehicle was picked up by one of those plate readers. So that information immediately gets sent to our dispatch, our officers in the cars, and they'll immediately know that there's a vehicle, it's in that location or it's past that location, and that'll give us a little bit of a better idea of where it is. If it hits one of the other ones or it doesn't, then maybe we're looking over here instead of just not really knowing. It'll give us a little bit more situational awareness and ability to address the situation a little bit better, more information.
One other comment is that when we chatted with the prosecutor's office after we decided to move forward with this last year, they actually commended Holmdel Township for moving forward with this. And actually their comment was they hope that more towns would actually do the same thing, because it's a proactive measure to help law enforcement, because you can't, whatever you have 5, 7 officers on at night, they can't be, this town's pretty big, and they can't be everywhere. So this is a tool to help them identify what may go in place. Nothing is absolute, but I thought it was a great feedback from the prosecutor's office that they thought it was a great move on our part to invest and try to help out and save public safety.
Yeah, definitely. And like we've said from the beginning, Chief said, we've said, this isn't a problem that's solved by one specific, you're not going to do one thing and solve this problem. It's a layered approach we're going to have to take with multiple things that we're going to have to do, both the public and the police and everybody involved, to actually, to combat this issue. And this is one of those tools that we're going to use.
And how many, just a quick question, how many do we have currently operating, guys?
We have 5 purchased and ready for deployment. We have 1 fully deployed, and the other ones we're just waiting for approvals. Yeah.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments on that. And again, this committee is always fully supportive of being proactive and being supportive of your needs and resources to help you and your department do the best job that you can to keep this community safe. So thank you very much. Jay, is there any, the next phase here?
We're good with the chief. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
And next, Mayor, Public Works.
Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. I was fine until you mentioned something. No. Oh, I like that. Like a straitjacket. saw that last night. So, she emailed me before. Yeah. Asking if I want to make a comment. So I'm like, all right, so like.
It was okay. Giving me? I said, please read before you go.
Jay, just, you can take it off whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, Victor is here. Obviously, Public Works and Infrastructure includes a huge segment of the community's infrastructure, not only roads, drainage, buildings and grounds, our park facilities. And I would just ask Victor to highlight, I know we could always use as much money in our road improvements as we can afford, balancing our overall capital request from all departments. But if there are any specific highlights that you want to emphasize in terms of new capital requests, or just an overall summary of the what our road program has looked like over the last few years. That is the biggest component of our capital program.
Since I've been here, we've had years where we've gone over $3 million for a road program and years where we've gone $1 million for a road program. I put in a request for substantially more than $1 million this year. I don't know how it'll fit in the overall budget, but we're doing a great job as bringing our roads back up to the condition that they should be in, but we still need to keep that process moving forward. If I had unlimited funds, they'd all be perfect, but I know that's not how everything works. We are getting some done next week, as a matter of fact, as part of the Bell Works agreement. Part of Roberts Road as an access road to Bell Works is getting done next week. American Way, all 2,200 feet of curbing was put in last week, and it's going to be milled and paved next week. And a section of Middletown Road is going to be milled and paved as well, and base repair as part of that agreement with Bell Works. And that's not money that we have to fund from the taxpayers.
Victor, just quick question, is there more to that fund after this project, or does that complete or deplete the fund at this point with this current project?
I believe there's still more, but I'll leave that to Barbara and Bill to answer. You know how much is left in the account with Bell Works? Okay. Yeah, I'm sure there's more there still.
No problem, thank you.
Again, we're putting together the list for this year as well to go out to bid for a road program. We have costs for all the roads, and now we're prioritizing that list and to see what we can and cannot do, and then we'll go out to bid, and hopefully, like last year, they came in really good, the bids, and we were able to do 2 extra roads because the bids came under, so it really worked out terrific last year. As far as Jay and I and Bill and Barbara have been going over sewer with our new company that manages our system now, and we have some funds in place already that were earmarked for sewer repairs, and a lot of those projects are going to be going forward this year, which I'm really happy to say. This is with our pump stations and our collection system, our piping in the street, so that's going to be moving forward, and a lot of that's going to be done through a co-op, so we don't have to go out to bid. All the larger projects are going to be, we're going out to bid for them, so I'm excited about those.
And on that note, referencing the sanitary sewer improvements, again, as was mentioned earlier, the sanitary sewer is a dedicated utility that is supported by the utility fees, not specifically the taxpayers, although obviously there's an overlap there, although there are significant portions of the township that are not connected to the sanitary sewer. But just by way of background, 2 years ago, I guess actually in 2021, there were 2 reports that were commissioned by the Township Committee specifically related to the sanitary sewer system. One was the specifically reviewing the pump stations in place, and that included a 10-year capital improvement plan. Related but separate was the 4-phase sanitary sewer repairs to the collection system itself and some of the force mains. As referenced earlier, our sanitary sewer system is a collection system. We then pump the effluent, the sewage to the BRSA, the Bayshore Regional Sewage Authority, where they do the treatment. So we have a really great foundation that was laid in 2021 for the necessary, identifying the necessary repairs to our sanitary sewer system. That was initially implemented last year, and now we're really in the phase of just putting that long-term plan into effect through annual funding. So that work is well underway and has really, we've identified all of the issues that need to be addressed there, and that's being worked into our overall capital plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. As far as our other buildings that we have in town, the roof is at its limit for this building. It isn't leaking, thank goodness, right now, but we want to be proactive, so we're putting together the bid specs. If you guys feel appropriate, we could fund it this year. We'll get the roof changed for this building. It was approved last year, a portable generator for us to have as a town. So this generator can run all of our pump stations, all of our buildings. I know our buildings have a generator, but you can't always rely on that. So this year we're putting in for the electrical upgrades to every location, all a pump station, a municipal building, which includes the police station, the community center, the firehouses, to be fitted with a device so our portable generator could be towed there, hooked up in a matter of minutes, and everything gets powered up again. So we're looking to do that. I've been talking with Jay and Barbara and Bill again about doing something special for the community center and making it more ADA compliant. I'll use your words, Jay. And we have thoughts of redoing their original to the building, upgrading the men's and women's room at the community center as well. As far as DPW goes, we're looking to, I don't know if you want me to get into specifics, but we're looking to replace a 2005 Packard truck. We're looking to replace a 2006 skid steer. We're looking to replace the zero-turn mowers that are on that we have now this year from 2005. And the bigger ticket item, we're looking to get add to the fleet a device that'll lift the grates off, the storm grates, suck out the basins to prevent clogs and flooding that we have from time to time, and just to put a maintenance program with that, have people dedicated to that in the spring, in the fall, to just keep them up and running and clear so we don't have backups on the roadway.
Do we currently have equipment to clean out those drains, or is that something that you do shared services with the
We
county?
To clean them out, we don't have anything.
Okay.
I use a shared service with Monmouth County, but we also, and I don't want to get the next vehicle, which would be a jetter truck, which costs a lot of money. It's very difficult to run. It's very high maintenance. We have a shared service with the county. They're great people over there. We have a great relationship with them. If we need something done, they get to us as quickly as possible, and they charge us a fair price for it.
Okay. And then as far as just cleaning out storm drains for leaves and stuff, is that different? Is that like a vacuum truck or something? Or?
Yeah, it's not a jetter. It's more like a vacuum truck. That's absolutely correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else, Victor?
That's it.
That's it. Any questions for Victor? Getting back to the road program, again, not knowing what we can budget this year or what we can borrow in the bond for that, are there any, is it more of just wear and tear repair that you're preparing, or are there any more, I don't want to say emergency, but are there any real issues that you're seeing with any of the roads in town, or is it just continuing that milling and replacing of roads that are just naturally deteriorating?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, but there are parts of a road that will require full depth repair, so we'll have to mill down 6 inches and put a 6-inch base in before we mill and gutter line mill and pave the road and put a nice canter into it for draining. And with all that, we're always replacing the grates and the heads because we have to, and we're also doing the curbs and inlets during the process as well.
Hey, Victor, one of the residents at the last meeting was asking about Bethany. I know we visited that road probably like 4 or 5 years ago. I know there's issues with utilities underneath the road, right, which prevent us from doing it. Any idea about, they keep asking me, like, when?
I had a discussion with Brian Brock from MRSA just yesterday. I told him my #1 priority for the sewer this year. We went out to bid twice on that project, and we got no bidders. It's a 14-foot main that has to be replaced. Some slip lining was done on the street, but this section has to be excavated and repaired. It's not a long section. It's well under 300 feet, but nobody wanted to work B-Baby because it's so small. And it is very, very difficult, utilities and the side of the road and a detour plan that has to be set up. But he agrees with me. That's our #1 project for this year, is to get that out to bid, get it constructed, and get that last lane of that road paved.
Yeah.
You know, now going forward, you guys changed the ordinance, and the years gone by, if the utility company went down the road, they only had to mill from center line to curb.
Yeah.
Now you changed it. Now they have to mill from curb to curb, which is wonderful. It would be paved now, even though we could possibly have to go back, but going forward, that'll never happen again. But that's our #1 priority for sewer repairs, is Bethany Road this year.
So that'll be on your, I guess, your top list to
Well,
get.
it won't be part of the road program, it'll be part of the sewer program.
Okay.
Just like on Mount Drive, the force main was just, comes out Mount Drive and goes through Ravine and up Stony Brook. This summer, as part of that project, it's completed now. They'll mill and pave,
Yep.
and we'll do the same thing on Bethany Road.
Okay.
Okay, so that's
Right.
why Bethany Road hasn't been paved, is because there's work that has to be
Yes,
done
we have
there,
to rip
okay.
up basically the whole road, because
Yeah.
it being so deep, it's gonna have to be, tiered back for the safety of the.
And that'll definitely be a tough one with the traffic
Yes, and
on
when
that.
can you do it? You can't
Right.
close it during school, so it has
Yeah.
to be done during the summer, or it's gonna be difficult, but it has to get done. It
Yeah.
has to get done this year.
Yeah, thank you. And then, is any of the section of Long Street on your proposed plan this year? Because I know that's starting to get pretty bad up on the hill there, going past the park.
If you go out to Long Street right now, you'll see curb work being done,
Okay.
because that's also being done this year.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone else? No, thank you, Victor. I appreciate it.
And Mayor, just a quick follow-up. We spent a little bit of time speaking about the sanitary sewer. Likewise, in terms of the foundation being laid, we are presently awaiting delivery of the report on our stormwater system within the community. We touched briefly on the stormwater when Victor was mentioning the drainage, clean-out equipment, that sort of thing, and the question that you asked. So that will also be a huge step forward in our subsequent year planning for drainage improvements, which also tie very closely into road improvements as well.
And when do we anticipate that, Jay?
Any day now.
Any day now.
I think the current, the most recent update was in May.
Okay, thank you very much.
And just to, I believe all the, actually Victor's still here, he can confirm, I believe all of the mapping of the drainage piping as well as outlets has been completed? So now it's just a matter of the inspections have been done, the formal mapping being delivered, and then there's a capital plan that is being developed as part of that.
Thank you.
Again, there for answer to the two questions that were asked. First one before was Bell Works. There's 77. It was the $700,000 that ordinance. There currently 77,471 left that we haven't encumbered. The snow removal from last year, we spent $12,600 for a contractor for a snowstorm. Brine purchased $2,800 and salt purchases $103,568.
And Mayor, at this time, I believe Bill has an overall summary of capital needs, and he can give his pitch as to the level of capital funding that we need to address in the current year budget.
Thank you, Bill.
Guess it boils down to how much you want to keep your debt service at. I mean, we were trying to keep the debt level about $5 million. In order to do that, we should really not exceed roughly $3.5 million in capital ordinances. If we want to go above that, if we went to roughly $4.5 million, our debt service will be about $6 million. And if we go above that to like 5.5, it'll be between 6.5 and $700,000 a year in debt service. You know, we did have a presentation done by NW Financial last year, and I believe the committee was looking to settle at around $3.5 million a year, which would keep the debt service roughly at $5 million per year. Again, last year ordinances were $5.5 million, so we did go above that, which is why we're going to try to make that payment, payment of the note of $700,000, try to make it this year to try to level it back down, you know, to $3.5 million. Again, you can choose to go higher. That's basically the TC's choice.
Bill, what's been our high and low debt service in recent years?
We're trying to keep, well, the problem is it was really low because we didn't do a lot of improvements for a number of years. So that's why we're trying to keep it level now at about $5 million a year if we can.
When you say really low, what was that number like?
I have to look it up. Because we had like about 2 or 3 bond sales in the space of 4 or 5 years.
So since like 18, 19?
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of catching up for, you know, with having bond sales.
I think we've been as low as 0, right? I think we've had as low as no capital improvement.
Well, no capital improvements, but the debt service. It's been,
Debt service, I'm
yeah.
sorry, Brian.
I got the history. I can get that to you, Brian, the history of that.
Yes, and my only comment would be that, you know, the debt service is sort of the residual paying the bill for whatever capital we approve. So as Bill has indicated, the past couple of years, we've tried to maintain that at $3.5 million in terms of our expenditure. The debt service follows suit thereafter. You know, we have significant requests for capital. Again, my recommendation starts with maintaining what we have. Replacing whatever facilities and infrastructure that we already have before we start talking about new facilities, new equipment. Recognizing again that we really have a couple of different, I'll call them pots of funding. We have our general capital improvements, our roads, our drainage improvements, our public facilities that are taxpayer funded. Our sanitary sewer capital improvements, because we have the dedicated utility budget and fund, those are funded through those revenues. Likewise, the pool operation is self-funded and self-supporting, so any capital expenditures there we treat separately. And then we also have the ability through our open space trust fund to not only maintain existing parks and playgrounds, but also for the acquisition of open space. And we've commissioned that report on our funding capability through our existing level of open space funds. if a close reading of the draft budget will reflect that, we are now, with the increase, the authorized increase in the tax levy for open space, that fund has been replenished. Moving forward, the funds will be more readily available for acquisitions as well as park improvements. So again, we treat those separately. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of our municipal operation, our building improvements, again, there's been a significant investment in fire facility, first aid facility, some of our other public facilities. But focusing on maintaining and replacing our existing capital equipment is where we are. So it's a matter of what our needs are and what the Township Committee feels is whether to continue our recommended level of investment on an annual basis to maintain those facilities and replace the equipment.
Thank you for that, not clarification, but explaining that, and I think it makes putting it, you put it well into like layman's terms where anyone can kind of understand that, and I think that's where we're at. That's going to be the focus of this committee this year, seeing where we have a lot of increases, and then focusing on maintaining our current, status quo almost first and foremost.
And while, our budget, when we're ready to introduce it, will include a capital plan, the capital plan and the capital improvement program is not funding authorization. Those funding authorizations come in the form of specific bond ordinances for specific projects and specific equipment. The only real direct impact in terms of our discussion as far as the budget is the level of funds that we have available in our capital improvement fund. As Bill indicated, the draft budget includes $250,000, which in theory provides the down payment required for up to $5 million in capital, in borrowing in the current year. But again, if our goal is to maintain the capital authorizations this year at the $3.5 million, then we will scale that back, but it has no direct impact in the current year on our budget discussions.
Thank you. Anyone have any other comments or questions for Bill or Jay? They got something else to talk about.
That's all we have. If there are any questions, I guess you want to. Bill's going to put this in perspective with his compilation and spreadsheet of the capital requests.
Great.
I'm not sure you can tell that the coffee's starting to wear off.
Now I gotta hook it up.
No rush, we're all just watching.
All eyes on you, Bill.
That's all right.
That's like when my kids were little, and they used to ask me to do the scoreboard at like the HYA games. Yeah. And I would be like, And all the parents are just staring at you.
The most thankless job in all of like rec athletics.
Yeah, it's the worst. And then kids are screaming at you. One school to the next, they're completely different. Yeah. So you go to SATs and you're like, I got this figured out. Then you're at Indian Hill. Oh my God.
Whatever you want. These are the capital requests by departments. For 2023, you'll see the total that they're requesting is $4,912,000, excuse me, $500. It's a little bit above our 3.5 million. They're by department and a different request, and we can.
Bill, could you blow it up a little bit, if you don't mind? You have 100%. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you can't see the dollar amount though.
We can scroll.
All right, you can see it. All right. Oops.
So just for clarification, this is just for the police department, the one that we were provided, right, Jay? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I guess what we have to decide is what the priorities are here, whether the replacement or the, there's a lot of new stuff in here too.
Bill, you have it broken down. I don't want to get into like the whole filtering thing, but can we see cost of replacement versus cost of new?
Yeah, I can reorganize it.
And then we can even break it down by department, filter by department.
All right. Some of them don't have, I assume these are all replacements. They're now sorted. Do we need the?
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of requests here. As Bill said, the total for the current year from all departments is 4.9 million versus what has been recommended is maintaining a level in the $3.5 million range. It is certainly the way I've always approached it is again looking at replacements first. So if there's general consensus that that is the appropriate way to prioritize these, then we can more accurately compare on a department basis. My belief is also that, in some places there is the idea that, departments rotate. One year it's fire, one year it's police, one year it's public works. To me, the priorities are shifting from year to year. So it really makes more sense to identify, to partially fund every department based on the most critical needs. And again, some of these are listed as current year. There's also, as part of the request, items that are previously requested should be priorities based on the fact that these are items that have already been somewhat in the pipeline and have presumably been cut in prior years. Unfortunately, I don't come with the benefit of knowing what may have been reviewed in a prior year and not funded, either on the theory that it would be a priority in the current year or that it is a lower priority. Again, I depend on the department supervisors to tell us what their needs are and to prioritize those needs. But the overall level of funding is a function of a decision at the township committee level.
And I think, yeah, Jay, which is why I was asking, right? The fundamental question I'm trying to get at, or answer I'm trying to get is, what's the cost, the capital cost of maintaining status quo, right? So replacement versus new. And once we have that, we can make consumption choices on the new.
Again, for where we are in the budget preparation process is, what is the level of comfort, the overall level of comfort as to funding our capital needs? And as we move forward, again, we have a couple of missing components in terms of our stormwater drainage plan that's being developed. But yeah, that's a great question, and we can do that sorting and provide that separately in that fashion.
Yeah, and then obviously, I would like us to have a copy of this that we can all review individually and ask questions on, individually, because we're all going to have a lot of questions on this, especially on new things, even replacement so I think this year this is going to be scrutinized maybe more than in prior years. So I think the committee needs a copy of this as soon as possible so that we can start, going through it.
The total for replacement is $4,107,000. So that's anything's replaced. This is replacing existing equipment.
And Mayor, I agree with you there. 65 line items, definitely a lot to digest, first time seeing it and going through it for us.
And again, hearing, I think, silence being consensus that the 3.5 million is at least the starting point, I think that provides us with the guidance to provide some of the legwork for doing some of the weeding out for you, rather than on a departmental basis. We can sort this in that fashion and provide you with that information within a day or two.
Hey, could we get it like in a hierarchy? Is that what you're talking about, Jay? Where they prioritize their needs and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for us to even comment on this
I
at this
think
point. Yeah.
what they've done in the past is have the different departments come in and justify them to exactly why they need what.
Bill, quick question for you.
Sure.
Quick question for you as I'm looking at the spreadsheet right now. Row 66 is 4.1 million for replacement. What are the items underneath that? From row 67 beyond, are
They're
they
future
out years?
Future out
Future
years,
needs,
yeah.
okay.
So we asked them for a minimum of a 5-year capital plan.
Great, okay, thank you.
And they've asked for, replacement of $4,107,000 for 23.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I remember doing this was, having this ahead of time and then, reviewing it and then speaking with, the administrator, the prior administrator, and kind of scrutinizing it and asking a lot of questions, do they really need this? And then, she would have provided feedback, and some things she had to get back to me, some things she already vetted, and I think, I'm sure all the members are going to want to do that.
Bill, is the deer fencing at De Palma on here?
Let me look, DPW. It was not requested.
Yeah, actually, that's a function of the Open Space Trust, so that's what I would call a non-current budget capital request.
That was, the TC approved that last year.
Was that funded last year?
Correct.
We never went out to bid.
Okay. I'll double check that.
Yeah, you could check the, get the executive minute notes from Wendy. We approved it probably last summer in exec.
I do remember one of the meetings when I was first on, Greg, I thought we just agreed to put it out to bid. I might have missed the earlier.
Correct. The bid, yeah. Yeah.
And
I
then-
actually saw Patrick De Palma was in here last Thursday. As I was leaving, I saw him walking in, and I think he was inquiring about the fencing. So just ironic that since this is up, just caught my attention again. I'm not sure you met him yet, Jay, but he's the current tenant at our farm at over on Centerville.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that, see where the status.
And then quick question, Bill, I'm guessing what we were given for the PD, this is also on your main sheet, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We
can get them back if you want. Victor can, it's up to you.
We'll provide this reformatted in the manner that's been requested, and that'll provide guidance for moving forward.
Actually, if you don't mind, can you just send me the raw document? Because I'll play. I like to play around in Excel. I'm kind of a geek.
But we're going to get what we requested.
Through the mayor, I guess I just want to inquire with you, Jay and Bill, just on if you have any anticipated time frame for introduction and adoption of the budget. I know we have to do some juggling sometimes with that 28-day period that Jay mentioned, so I just wanted to kind of look at the calendar, see what, you know.
Yeah, I would say based on the feedback today, the operational side of the budget is ready to go. Again, we're at the capital stage, which is much more fluid. So I would say, you know, we are prepared to move forward. For next Tuesday may be a little ambitious, but I'd say the following meeting we would be ready to introduce, Bill.
Yeah, the whole budget's done except for the capital. Again, the capital is just a plan. It's not that it's not a spending tool. That's all done by ordinance. So that's subject to change. As soon as you do an ordinance, you can change that whole capital budget. I think it was pretty vague last year, wasn't it? It was pretty vague last year. the budget.
There's an exactly 28-day gap, but I believe it's it might be a public notice. I got to check the statute.
10-day public notice.
10 days.
Prior
and
to the
28
hearing.
10 days
So,
prior, yeah.
So it's exactly 28 days if you were to introduce next Tuesday between that and the May 23rd meeting. Sometimes it just happens that if, you know, the dates line up with your meeting schedule, you can end up being like 21 days and then it doesn't work. So we've had this happen before, and I think we've had special meetings just to make sure we get it done.
And again, if on the operational portion of the budget, if we're ready to move forward, we can do that, have it ready for introduction with I would call it a capital plan based on the requests. But again, we've got plenty of opportunity to fine tune that based on the ordinances at the time of introduction. My policy is generally, you know, starting the meeting after the budget is adopted, we start tackling the capital from the various funds, the sanitary sewer, the current portion, the swim, and then open space. Really take those as individual chunks as we move into June, July, August for the capital. Obviously, the current being the ones that are done first. Assuming the overall level of capital is somewhat agreed in at the 3.5 with no more than 5 million based on the funds that we have available in the capital improvement fund.
That's one to grab last year's.
I think, is that complete you and Bill's presentation?
It does.
Okay.
I was going to show you last year's capital budget. Well, I got to get there.
And that was 5.5, right, Bill?
Yeah. Again, it's pretty vague. You know, it's just,
Can you blow it up a little bit?
yeah. I mean, we can put numbers in here, but again, nothing is set in stone till you do an ordinance. So a lot of towns, it's maybe 10 lines in there, and it really says nothing. You know, it's just IT improvements, municipal building improvements, acquisition of equipment. And then when you actually do the ordinance is when you actually add the details to what you're going to do.
Is it fair to say, Bill, the only kind of on-budget necessity for the capital would be the 5% down
Yes,
payment?
that's the only thing that's needed, yeah. And again, if we put too much in there, like a lot of towns do, it doesn't expire. It's good for next year, and the year after, and the year after.
And right now, we have a 5% down for 5 million.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha. We know we're not going to exceed that.
We could just set this up to be vague for the introduction and just, when we do the ordinance. I mean, it's a plan, and
Yeah, I think I got it. Yeah. I'm good. Is everyone else good at this point? Okay. So we're good.
I think the only remaining item is public comment.
Yep. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. At this time, our two guests that are here today with us, if you have any public comments, please come up, state your name and address for the record, please.
Patrick Trisquita, 56 Line Road. Several years ago, the voters overwhelmingly passed to raise the LoSAP payments for the Holmdel's volunteers. And it also stated that it would be raised to the max as the state level increases to the max. My question is, has it been raised in this budget to the maximum, and what is that maximum? I believe it was $15.80 per volunteer annually into a retirement account several years ago. It must have been raised with inflation. Has it been incorporated? Has the raise been done and incorporated into this year's budget? Thank you.
Thank you. I believe it was raised to the max, but Jay can clarify that.
Yeah, I could double check unless Bill knows offhand. It's my recollection that the COLA year-to-year adjustment is done at the state level. It doesn't require any additional authorization locally. And typically, municipalities would fund for the historic level of actual participation. So, because typically not every volunteer gets the same level of LoSAP contribution. It's based on their level of participation. So I'm not sure, Bill, what the practice has been here, if you know offhand.
it was, I believe it was raised last year. If you look at the numbers we've had from 21 to 22, took a substantial jump.
Yeah, just pointing out on sheet 20 of the draft budget, it looks like, as Bill's indicated, not all of the funds were expended. Assuming the same level of participation and contribution, sufficient funds are in the budget for that.
And I would note, it was actually the voters approved increasing to the maximum ability because Holmdel's program was established late in the game and COLAs weren't granted in certain years over the time that the period existed. So now that's up to the highest it could possibly be. And actually the ordinance and the voter approval has automatic COLAs, so the committee doesn't need to act each year. So those COLAs will be built in, but that 1 year, year-over-year jump, I guess, was experienced on budget last year, and so moving forward, it would just be the simple COLA that would, have the, a minor budgetary impact as compared to something substantial that would need to be taken into account. I believe DCA puts out what the annual cost of living is in an advisory. I'm not sure if I've reviewed that, but I'm guessing it's a higher number given inflation.
If we don't know at this moment, I'm sure we could find out. Yeah. So, Bill, is that something that you could provide at the next meeting?
I can find out.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please come up.
Hello, Eric Silvergold, 9 Powderhorn Court. First, I'd just like to thank Bill and Jay for all the hard work that they've done on the budget. I have a newfound appreciation for the level of work required to put this together, and it's quite a lot of work. I had a couple of questions. Just first, is the draft of the budget available to members of the public, so what was presented here? Is it available now, or will it be made available shortly?
I don't know if the draft budget is given to the public. I don't.
Yeah, typically, draft documents are advisory and are not available to the public. Once it's finalized and ready for introduction, at that point it would become available. Certainly, I know in your capacity as a member of the Financial Advisory Committee, you have access to things that are not generally publicly available, so we'll provide you with whatever you need.
Okay.
As well as the rest of the committee.
Thank you. So, I was first asking as a member of the public, but then second, I would ask as chairman of the Finance Advisory Committee if it could be made available to members of the Finance Advisory Committee.
We'll discuss that. I don't know if that's something that we want to
well-
set a precedent on is providing draft documents. But we'll discuss that, and if we can, I don't know.
Once the township committee gives direction that the budget is in a position to be introduced, as the administrator noted, you know, it would then become a public record because it would no longer be advisory. And I would note that anything that's shared with the committee, we would also, you know, ensure is shareable publicly, because that would only, you know, I think be appropriate, just to make sure, you know, full
So,
disclosure.
if it was deemed advisory, then it would also be not Oprah accessible, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Another question, so what would the impact of approving the full 4.9 million of budget request be, or how would that translate in terms of the impact on our annual budget? And was the budget that you presented today, did that assume a baseline of 3.5 million of annual capital expenditures?
No, because that debt's in the future. So we're not paying down that debt. That was it's just advising them that if they do go up to that high level, that your debt service will go from approximately $5 million to up to $7 million possibly each year. Depending again on the interest rates and the timing and everything else, so.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand and I think it's important for everyone to understand the impact of the capital request with respect to what was presented tonight. So, or this morning, 3.5 million is assumed in what you presented. Is that correct?
3.5 million is what was recommended, what we've been trying to maintain. So it maintains a level debt service of $5 million per year. Again, last year he put $5.5 million in capital, which was above the 3 million. If we went that high of a level, you know, our debt service would jump, you know, close to $2 million per year.
Okay, so that would then be the annual impact on the overall expenditures for the town. Is that
Yes.
reasonable? Okay. So then, just as kind of a follow-up question to that, at what level of capital expenditures and resulting new debt service expenses would Holmdel's AAA Moody's rating be at risk?
Do not have an answer to that offhand. We'd have to research that one.
Okay, because I think, I don't know what the stated goal of the TC is with respect to our bond rating, but having a AAA bond rating is highly unusual. Probably less than 5% of municipalities in the country are awarded a AAA. I personally, as a member of the public, would like to see Holmdel maintain that. So I just think it's important to keep that in mind as you're analyzing the budgetary implications here. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, we're very proud to have that AAA bond rating, and you know, it would be our goal to maintain that, you know, of course. Yeah. Thank you very much. If there's no other comments, or if are there any other comments by the board before we make a motion to close? No. Would that conclude our thing? Okay, so at that point, I would like to make a motion. I would like to thank everyone again, Bill, Jay. That was a wonderful presentation. It was explained very clearly. Thank you for answering all of our questions, and obviously thank you for all the time that you've put into this behind the scenes. And we appreciate it, and we look forward to looking at the requested or the document that's going to provide insight onto how we should move forward on capital improvements. And that's it. And thank you very much, and I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?